Hey guys, Crystal Thompson here. Welcome to my second video. We are making the most out of the newest awesome Simon Says stamp kit. And let me show you what we're going to be doing. I'm totally keeping it simple, super last minute. We have one of the pattern papers that's been cut 4¼ by 5½. We have a little strip of that beautiful silver paper also included in the kit. And then I have a little strip of black ready to go. And this is going to be the main components of our card. For the sentiment, we're going to keep it, again, very easy. Wishing you a very happy, and I wanted a Christmas, but I didn't want anything big because I wanted to fit in the strip. So I'm using the Merry Christmas. We are masking that Merry. And let me show you how we're going to do this. So I'm going to set these things aside. And we are also using some of the silver embossing pattern. So again, I have my stuff ready to go. And all we're really going to be doing here is going to be heat embossing, wishing you a very happy and then the Christmas. So I've added some of that purple tape. It's covering the Merry. And then we're going to ink it up. We're going to remove it. And then we're going to stamp it down. So I'm going to bring in my clear embossing ink. And again, this is another way to really extend the use of your stamp. So like I said, I don't have a smaller Christmas, but this is really going to be able to fulfill. And I felt that that silver is really going to match nicely with the background silver that we have going on. And we're going to turn those into little paper ribbons. So I can't wait to get started. All right, so we're going to ink up the wishing you a very happy. We're going to do it right on the center, trying to keep it straight. I'm going to hold it for a couple seconds. We're going to grab that, try not to smudge it. We're going to bring in our silver embossing pattern, and we're going to cover that. And that way, that is set and ready to go, and then we can just go ahead and move on to the masking of that sentiment. So I'm shaking it off. I kind of dropped it there. And we're going to remove any excess. If you have an embossing buddy or a little brush, you can remove any of that extra embossing pattern. But because we like to wing things around here, you know, like parenting and anything else, marriage, we're just going to clean it up. All right, so I have my Christmas, and I'm going to use just the top of the ink pad. Let me bring it closer to camera. And then we're going to remove the masking tape. And then we're going to just focus. Don't look at the Merry, just focus on the Christmas. Getting it straight, nice and even. And the size of the Christmas and the other sentiment, the font is the same and the sizing is the same, which allows you to be able to do this and have it not look like an oddball. So there you go. So wishing you a very happy Christmas. We're going to grab our heat gun and we're going to heat set from the bottom. That way you don't blow any of your embossing out of the way, and then you can really see what you've embossed so you don't overcook. I'm going to switch hands and do the Christmas. And mine was a little bit long, and that way I can trim the edges, but then we can really put our card together now. So we're going to set everything aside and start this. So we hit back to our plaid here. So I want to create a little ribbon. And so all we're going to do is we're going to use our scissors and cut a triangle starting at the tip of the cardstock. And again, this is just another way to easily layer your cardstock, layer your papers, give it some dimension, and then work with that beautiful pattern paper that we have received. So we're going to grab this. We have some foam, so I have a piece of foam tape. Not that one. We're going to grab that. We're going to place it on the back. So figure out which one's shinier. I think the other side is shinier. So we're going to place our foam here, remove that backing, which is usually the hardest part of making cards, is removing the foam backing. I'm going to place it down. And now we can actually get an idea of where we need to trim this up. So we're going to trim up right here just to make it even. And don't worry that it's a little bit curly. Once we add that foam, it's going to straighten up. And these cuts are going to be a little less sharp at an angle, so that way we still have room for those wording, and it looks a little more even. So there we go. We're going to bring back our foam. We're going to place it on the back. And thankfully, this strip of cardstock was just large enough to be able to hold a whole piece without having to trim it or bring in a separate piece of foam. So we're going to place this down. And there you have it. Super easy, very basic Christmas card. And now you can just put it on your card base and be ready to go. All right, guys, for our next card, we're going to keep it super clean and simple. We're going to be using the Christmas and wishing you a very happy. We're going to be doing it a little bit of watercolor, but the main event on this one is going to be this beautiful rose gold with this double layer of white. So we're going to begin by stamping the wishing you a very happy, I keep saying merry, but it is happy. And we're going to do this with the Simon Says Black Embossing ink. Excuse me, Black Intense. And we're going to heat set it. That way it doesn't react in the water when we bring in our watercolors. We're going to just stamp it on the left side of the card. And so I have two pieces of cardstock here. We have a 5.5 by 4.25, and then I have a second that's been trimmed that's going to be lifted like this. It's going to give it dimension. However, it's going to keep it very nice and clean and simple. We're going to bring in our second ink pad. This is going to be the Embossing and Watermark ink. And what we're going to do here, let me set this aside. We're going to bring in the Christmas. We're going to heat emboss it with that rose gold. So I'm going to really be sure that this is ready to go. And so when we apply the heat on the Christmas and on this rose gold embossing powder, it's also going to kind of heat set and cook that other intense black, so it doesn't get affected by that water. So it just kind of does a dual purpose when we do it this way. Super easy card, of course. Again, perfect for last minute card making, especially Christmas card making. We're going to remove any of the excess rose gold embossing. We're going to bring in our heat gun. And we're going to heat set from the bottom. And that way you can see it cook, you can see it heat emboss, and then stop at the perfect point without overdoing it. So that's ready to go. And we're going to move on to doing our watercolor. So just making sure that it's all perfect. So how we're going to do this is I have an assortment of watercolor markers. So I'm using the Zig Clean Color. And let me show you what we got. And we're going to do them in this specific order. We're going to use the lilac. We're going to move on to the blue, which is a really light blue, which is going to be haze blue. So we're keeping with that pastel look. We're going to move on to the next one, which is, we're going to move on to green, which is pale green. Then we're going to do the yellow, which is the lemon yellow. Orange, we're going to be using this light brown. And then last but not least, we're going to use peach pink. And this is going to be the rainbow order that we're going to be doing this. So I'm going to grab my acrylic block. We're going to remove that Christmas. We're going to add it right under it. And so it's going to help us kind of keep those colors. We're going to add the watercolor marker directly to the acrylic block. And so you will see that when you stamp this down, it's going to kind of coincide with our Christmas lettering. And that way everything gets a wash of color. Then I have a brush. If you have a spritzer, you can totally spritz your acrylic block. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add water directly to my Christmas. And this is Neenah 110 pound. You do not have to use watercolor cards, especially on something as easy as this. We're going to bring this down. And we're going to smoosh that watercolor. And so the water on the card is going to absorb it And as you can see, let me move my fingers. See how fun that is? It's really just grabbing that and spreading it around. You can leave it there for a couple seconds. We're going to lift it, and then you just let it dry. And so it's going to keep it super clean, super easy, and then we're ready to go and mat everything together. All right, so that is nice and dry. We're gonna put it on over a card base. However, I wanna lift it. So I have a piece of one-sided foam. You can get this at your favorite craft stores. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to attach it to the card base. So you can use a roll of foam, which works just as fine, but I feel like sheets of foam, especially when attaching a big piece of cardstock like this, it just makes it look more even. So we're adding our glue or roller glue, and then we're adding the piece that does not have adhesive, just the foam part, and then we're going to peel off the back part that does have some of that tape. And it just, again, it's just a super easy way to get a nice flat and clean look. We're going to attach it right to our card base, and because that top part is just cut about 1/4 of an inch smaller on each side, it just masks really nice. And look how pretty and super clean, super simple this beautiful watercolor Christmas card. And it was really, really easy. So let's move on to our next card. All right, for our next card, we're going to be using some of the different components from the card kit. So we're going to be using the Chilling with My, and then we're going to use Gnomes. And then I have pre-colored 3 of the gnomes, and I have selected, again, my color combination. It's just easier to select that and then color everything the same thing, and then it just matches. So we have a variation of like teal and pink and reds, and that's kind of what we've got going on here for ink. So we're going to do some masked sentiments with ink blending. So we're going to do worn lipstick for our pink, peacock feathers for our teal, and then we're going to use schoolhouse red for the actual stamping of the sentiment. And the kit, it did include 3 wobble action, so I feel like it's going to be super funny to add the Chilling with My Gnomies and then add this to and have them be wobbly gnomes. So first things first, we are going to begin by stamping the sentiment. And my reasoning why is that once it's stamped, we're going to heat set it to be sure that it's completely dry, and then we're going to mask it. So let me make sure I get you guys right on camera here. I'm going to ink up the gnomies out of this. This is Schoolhouse Red, so it's just a brighter red than that lipstick red that we've been using throughout the card kit. And we're going to stamp this down, and I feel like we need to stamp it down on the left center of this card. That way it allows enough room for the gnomes and have them all wobble action. It's going to be just a super fun, super happy you know, holiday card. And technically Chilling with My Gnomies could be a winter card or even just saying hello. So I'm going to stamp this Chilling with My Gnomies right above the gnomes. And we're going to lift that. So then you have this beautiful sentiment ready to go. I'm going to set everything aside. I'm going to bring in my heat gun, and I'm seriously just going to heat set this so when we apply our masking tape, it doesn't go anywhere. So we're just going to be sure that that is completely cooked, completely cured, and it dries into this really pretty red color. All right, now that we added some heat to this, we're going to bring in our purple tape. This is from iCraft, and it really is meant for paper craft. So we're going to we're going to go right under that gnomes. And I love that you're able to see what, you know, where the gnomies is. So we're going to add a second layer. And there we go. So just going to keep it super, super clean. I'm going to bring in a cardstock or a piece of scrap paper, and we're going to set this here for our ink blending purposes, and that way it keeps our surface nice and clean. And then the tape's going to hold it down. So it makes, you know, dual purpose here. We're masking, it's holding. So now we're going to move on to our colors. We have Distress Oxide and Peacock Feathers and in Worn Lipstick. And we're really just going to alternate with the colors that we got going on here. So we're going to begin with this Peacock Feathers. We're going to grab it with our blender brush, and we want to soften it up. We don't want to have a super heavy coloring of it. So I'm going to move my hands to hold it over here. And we're not going to go up, really. We're just going to kind of stick here and keep it nice and clean. And then we're going to blend these two. It's going to turn to a really pretty purple. So as you can see, everything's just going to blend. The red ink sentiment, the teal and the pink. It's just going to be a really fun, cheery card for this holiday season. So I can't wait to see what you guys make. Be sure to tag me, Crystal Thompson Design _ in between every word, and that's for Instagram. And then I do have a YouTube, so of course you should be watching that here. Be sure to click subscribe. That is a huge, huge, huge thing when you click subscribe. Okay, so I have my water brush and I can't find my spritzer, so I'm going to use my water brush. We're going to flick it, and again, all this is going to do is going to make that Distress Oxide react with the water. It's going to look like little droplets. At this point, if you wanted to add some white paint, that would look really cool. But again, we are creating all these holiday cards with very minimal supplies because I want you to be able to use your Simon Says kit at its entirety. So again, this is the second video doing 4 cards, clean and simple, with the Simon Says December card kit. We're going to set this aside. We're letting this dry for just a second. And now we're going to remove that masking tape. So when you're removing masking tape, you really want to roll. And if you ever work with vinyl, you don't lift up, right? Because it tears up. And so as you can see, you see how that ink color is not lifting with the tape? That's because we had heat set it earlier. So look how pretty that looks. It gives it into a beautiful dimensional soft look. And now we are ready for our gnomes. So if you haven't used Wobble Action, these are super, super easy. So think about the placement of your gnomes. And these have all been colored with Copics. So we're gonna just grab, so the Wobble Actions have 2 backers. So you have this clear one, and the clear one is usually placed directly on the cardstock. And I'm kind of springing it up because I want it to be really high. And then we're going to remove the backing on the plastic part of it. And this is what's going to go down on the card. So you're going to place it. We're going to press that down. We're going to grab our gnome. And see how fun that wobble action. Now we're going to add the second one. And so for this one, I'm going to do it just a little bit different. I'm going to remove that backing on it. Okay. All right. And then we're going to place that clear. And we're not going to stretch this one as much as we stretched that one. The reason why is that this is going to be kind of a layered. So you're going to have a layered wobble action gnome. And the hardest part of this whole card is removing the backing. No, that's not true. Just don't bite your nails, and that really does wonders for the whole thing. Okay, there we go. And so these gnomes are gonna, like I said, they're gonna be layered on top of each other. Be sure that you don't put your adhesive over the other one. And then we're gonna try this one a little bit different. We're gonna grab the plastic part first. Here we go. And I'm finding that you really want to remove that backing from the corner. Grab it at the corner. And then these guys, if you fold, the tabs lift. And then makes it easier to remove it. And then we're going to really stretch that one out. We're going to place the clear backing on its tummy. And then we're going to add him over here. And so there we go. Our gnomes are with its gnomies. At this point, you can do any embellishment. I'm going to keep it nice and clean and simple. And they're all wobble action. So this is really a fun card to send to somebody with kids. All right, we are on our last card, and I wanted to use the awesome die included in the kit. And guys, I know this is really popular and it's be beautiful with the pattern paper, but I want to do something else. I wanted to do a window. So what you're going to need is going to be a folded piece of card base, and there is a piece of white cardstock included in your kit. So we're going to be die cutting this from that. We're going to be using GNOME for the holidays right under it. We're going to be doing that in the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black. Then if you have a little scrap piece of watercolor cardstock, we're going to die cut the other part of the gnome, and we're going to color this guy. We're going to be using red for the hat. Then we have this natural beige for the nose. We're going to be using the light gray for the beard, and then of course the cornflower blue for the outfit. So we're going to begin by die cutting our items. So I'm going to be doing this with my Gemini. So I'm going to bring in my cutting board here, and we're going to flip this open. Then using some positioning tape, post-it tape, or masking tape, you can press this down and be sure to center it. And we're going to stamp the sentiment after this is cut out. So we're going to secure it with this temporary tape, and then we're going to run it through. Alrighty guys, so I ran it through my die cutting machine. As you can see, this is going to be really nice. It's going to fold super clean. And now we have an extra little gnome. So if you wanted to color this, you're totally welcome. I'm going to set it aside. Then I ran the little other part of the gnome with all the pieces, and this was ran through watercolor paper. Again, if you don't have watercolor paper, you could do it through your Neenah or the cardstock that's included in the kit. You just can't add a ton of water, which is just fine. All right, we're going to begin by stamping our sentiment gnome for the holidays, and we're going to do this in the Intense Black ink from Simon, of course. And we're going to stamp it right under the little gnome, using it as our little center position. And there we have that beautiful sentiment. So at this point, we can set this aside before we begin any assembly. So we're going to come in with our Zig Clean Color markers, and we're going to separate these guys. So we're going to think about the shadow of where, where's the light hitting. So I'm going to add the edge first. So I'm going to treat this like coloring with Copics. And so if you've taken any Copic classes, you really think about the shadows first, and then you move on to coloring, right, or blending. So the reason I love the Zig Clean Color is that there's not a ton of blending needed. So I've added some of that marker. I have my water brush ready to go, and then I'm going to color up. If you don't have watercolor markers, you could use, if you got last month's kit, it came with a set of watercolors. So again, you can watercolor with that, and it would give you that beautiful look. And again, you could do it with Copics. You can color it, not have to do it out of watercolor cardstock. But all right, so the hat's ready to go. You can totally come back in and add another wash of color. But it's going to look so cool when we add that. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to clean off our brush. We're going to move on to the little nose, and I don't feel like we're going to have to do a ton of blending on this guy. So the nose is itty bitty. We're going to be using natural beige. And one of the tricks that I had seen is that if you use your masking tape, put it down, and then you can hold your die cuts, especially when you're using itty bitty pieces such as these. So there we have it. All right, so we're going to move on to the light gray. We're going to add the shadow at the top. We're going to flicker it down. And by using this little tape, it really allows us to not have to hold it down. Makes it much, much easier. We're going to grab our acrylic block again, add some of that gray, and then bringing that color down. So that's really what's going to give it that natural, pretty watercolor look. And once it's dry, again, you can come back and add a second wash. We're going to grab the blue, and the shadow is going to come from the bottom. I'm going to add some of that blue there, back with our brush. And when you add water to the marker that you added to your watercolor paper, it kind of does grab it. So again, makes it super easy to not have to blend a ton. And I didn't pull out the little bottom parts of the die. Has these little triangles. I will put those there at the end. So we're going to watercolor the whole thing, and then we are going to assemble it. So we're going to let this dry for a couple minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You could bring in your dryer or your heat embosser to really speed up the process. All right, all of our pieces are cut. We're going to utilize the outer part of the card as our guide. So we're going to be using a little bit of purple tape just to hold it down to be sure it's going to stay closed. I have two sizes of foam. I have these little square guys, and then I have these larger pieces of foam. The large piece of foam is really, of course, going to be for the larger pieces. So we're going to start at the top with the hat. We're going to add the foam. If you have any excess foam, be sure to cut it off so it doesn't get stuck on the opening of your card. We're going to remove that backer and we're going to place it in. So again, we're using the actual outline of the gnome to be our guide. We're going to move on to the little nose, and so this is really like putting a puzzle together, and it's quite fun. So we're going to remove that backing again. We're going to line up the little nose. So if you need help with that, I think that's the smallest piece of it all. We're going to utilize our scissors here and press that down. Move on to a larger piece of foam for the beard. And I really like the way this turned out. It turned to be easy and simple, and it gives it a lot of dimension by watercoloring each piece. So I've seen where they're doing paper piecing together by die cutting every little die cut of a different paper, and that looks really fun too, because then you can mix and match gnomes. So on this one, I've taken out the little triangles from the die cut. We're going to add the white base, so it's going to look like the bottom part of this, so it won't really matter if they're in or they're out. It's just going to give it more dimension. And then we're going to place it right under the beard. And again, it's kind of like a puzzle. And now we are ready. So we can embellish at this point. I'm going to leave it, again, clean and simple. And you have room in the inside of the card to write whatever it is that you're writing if you want to stamp it again with a different part of the sentiment. All right, guys, I'm so glad you spent these couple minutes with me doing these 4 clean and simple cards using the Simon Says Stamp December card kit. So we're going to run through what we made, just simple stamping with the pattern paper. We got watercolor rainbow, wishing you a very happy Christmas. Super clean and simple. We got this really fun Wobble action gnomes, chilling with my gnomies. This is more of a winter card. And then, of course, we have the window die cut gnome for the holidays. I hope you liked these cards. Be sure to click subscribe so you get notifications on new videos. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.